The air in rural Nova Scotia is usually filled with the scent of pine and the quiet stillness of the Maritimes. But on May 2nd, 2025, that silence was shattered. At 10:01 a.m., a frantic 911 call came from a home on Glock Road in Lansdowne Station. Malia Brooks Murray reported the unthinkable. Her 2 children, young Lily and Jack Sullivan, had simply vanished. They had wandered away from the property, she said, swallowed by the dense, unforgiving woods of Pictou County. What followed was a mobilization of force rarely seen in the province's history. Over 160 searchers, drones, helicopters, and K-9 units tore through 4 square kilometers of thick brush. For 6 days, the community held its breath. But as the sun set on the 6th day, the active search was scaled back. No footprints, no voices, no children. 8 months have passed since that morning. 8 months of agonizing questions, thousands of hours of video surveillance, and dozens of polygraph tests that have yielded nothing but silence. The RCMP Major Crime Unit has taken the lead, shifting the focus from a search and rescue to a deep, forensic dive into the lives of those left behind. They have utilized cadaver dogs and analyzed every digital footprint, yet Lily and Jack remain ghosts in the machine. But now, in January 2026, the investigation has suddenly sharpened its focus. A new development has emerged, bringing the children's stepfather, Daniel Martell, into the center of a forensic storm. He has provided a blood sample for genetic analysis, a move that suggests the police are no longer just looking for children, but for a specific biological truth hidden on a piece of evidence found in the earliest days of the disappearance. In the immediate wake of the disappearance, a discovery was made that seemed to offer a glimmer of hope. 1 kilometer from a family home, snagged in the branches of a tree on Lansdowne Station Road, family members found a piece of pink fabric. It was quickly identified as part of Lily's favorite pink LOL doll blanket. For a moment, it felt like a trail. Perhaps the children had passed this way. Perhaps they were just beyond the next ridge. But the hope was short-lived. A tracking dog was rushed to the scene, but it couldn't pick up a scent. The trail didn't just go cold. It felt artificially placed. The mystery deepened 2 days later, when the RCMP made a second, far more disturbing discovery. At the very end of the Sullivan family driveway, tucked inside a common trash bag, lay the second half of that same pink blanket. The same blanket, torn into 2 distinct pieces. One piece found deep in the woods, the other discarded with a household refuse. This is the central anomaly of the Sullivan case. If the children wandered off, why is their blanket in 2 places at once? Why would a child carry a torn fragment into the woods while the other half stayed behind in a garbage bag? For 8 months, the RCMP has kept their theories on this blanket close to the vest. They haven't explained the mechanics of how it was torn or how it traveled. But the blanket is no longer just a piece of fabric. It is now a biological map. Investigators are convinced that something is written in the DNA on that pink fabric, something that requires a direct comparison to the man who lived in the house with them. Daniel Martell, the children's stepfather, has broken his silence regarding the newest phase of the investigation. In an interview that has sent ripples through Nova Scotia, Martell confirmed he recently signed a consent form and allowed a technician to draw his blood. He was remarkably candid, yet the details he provided only served to thicken the fog surrounding the case. According to Martell, the RCMP specifically told him his DNA would be tested against something found on the blanket. When reporters pressed him for what that something was, blood, saliva, touch DNA, he claimed he couldn't provide details. The RCMP, maintaining their wall of silence, refused to comment at all. This creates a haunting vacuum. What could be on a child blanket that is so specific it requires a stepfather's genetic profile to decode? Martell's cooperation is a double-edged sword. On one hand, he is following the pattern of a man with nothing to hide. He has handed over his phone records, his bank statements, and even his Google Maps history. He claims that when he signed a consent form, he watched an officer check a box that indicated no criminal involvement. To Martell, this DNA test is his path to total exoneration, a way to finally silence the whispers of the community. However, Legal experts warn that in the world of major crime investigations, no criminal involvement is a fluid term. It doesn't mean a crime hasn't been committed. It simply means that at this moment, the evidentiary threshold for an arrest hasn't been met. The police aren't just looking for Martell's DNA to implicate him. They might be looking for it to exclude him or to find out why it's there in a context that shouldn't exist. To understand why this is happening 8 months later, we have to look at the cold, hard reality of genetic analysis. DNA testing isn't like what you see on television. It doesn't happen in 42 minutes. But 8 months is an exceptionally long time for a standard comparison. This suggests that the RCMP isn't dealing with a clear sample. They may be dealing with touch DNA, microscopic skin cells, or perhaps a degraded sample that required advanced technology to even detect. In a household, everyone's DNA is everywhere. It's on the remote, the door handles, and yes, the children's blankets. So why the urgency for a fresh blood sample now? One possibility is that the police have found DNA on the blanket that doesn't belong to the children, and they need to know if it's innocent DNA from a parent or the DNA of a stranger. If Martell's DNA is found on the piece of the blanket in the woods, he could argue it got there through normal household contact before the blanket left the house. But if the DNA is found in a specific pattern, say, inside a knot or on a specific tear, it tells a much darker story about who last handled that fabric. Then there's a third person, the unknown, by getting reference samples from everyone in the home, Maliae, the mother, and Daniel, the stepfather. The RCMP can effectively digitally subtract the family from the evidence. Whatever DNA is left over after the family is accounted for belongs to a third party. This is often how stranger danger or abduction theories are proven or debunked. The blanket isn't just a piece of evidence anymore. It's a filter designed to catch a killer or a kidnapper. As the investigation enters its 9th month, the public pressure on Daniel Martell has reached a boiling point. In his recent media appearances, observers have noted a peculiar shift in his speech. He began referring to himself in the third person, stating, "That's what this has always been about, making Daniel seem evil." Behavioral analysts often point to this distancing language as a psychological defense mechanism, a way for an individual to separate themselves from a narrative they find distressing or accusatory. Martell maintains that social media has left his reputation in tatters. He portrays himself as a man who has given the authorities everything they've asked for, only to be met with more suspicion. And he's not wrong about the scope of the scrutiny. The RCMP has conducted 75 formal interviews and reviewed over 8,000 video files. They have looked into every corner of his life. Yet they haven't cleared him. They haven't cleared anyone. The tragedy of the Sullivan case is the lack of a scene. Usually, in a disappearance, there is a point of struggle or a clear path of travel. Here, we have 2 pieces of a pink LOL doll blanket, separated by a kilometer, one in a tree and one in the trash. It's a riddle designed to taunt. Was the blanket torn to create a false trail? Was it used to transport something? The fact that a tracking dog couldn't find a scent at the tree where the first piece was found is a massive red flag for investigators. It suggests the blanket might have been placed there rather than dropped by a child moving through the woods. If the DNA results show that the person who handled that blanket wasn't a child, the entire wandered away theory collapses instantly. We are now in the winter of 2026. The ground in Nova Scotia is frozen, much like the investigation itself. The government of Nova Scotia is still offering a $150,000 reward for information leading to the discovery of Lily and Jack. That money remains untouched. No one has come forward with a smoking gun tip, despite over 1,000 leads being processed by the Major Crime Unit. Staff Sergeant Rob McSinon has reminded the public that sometimes the smallest detail holds the biggest answer. The DNA on that pink blanket is that small detail. It is the objective truth that doesn't rely on memory, polygraphs, or he said, she said testimony. Genetic analysis doesn't speculate. It identifies. It will tell the RCMP who was the last person to touch that fabric, and potentially how it ended up in a trash bag at the end of a driveway. As we wait for the lab results, the community remains on edge. Every time a new court document is unsealed or a family member speaks to the press, the hope for Lily and Jack is rekindled. tempered by the growing fear of what the truth might look like. Are we looking for two children lost in the wilderness, or are we looking for a crime scene that was hidden in plain sight? The search for Lily and Jack Sullivan is far from over. Whether this DNA test provides a final piece of the puzzle or just leads to more questions, one thing is certain. The investigators are not giving up. Every child deserves to be found, and every family deserves the truth, no matter how cold or difficult that truth may be. We will continue to follow the evidence, the documents, and the science